Exodus chapter 6 verse 28 through chapter 9 verse 35. In the day in which the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I am the Lord. Speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, whatsoever I say to thee. And Moses said before the Lord, Behold, I am not able in speech, and how shall Pharaoh hearken to me? And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Behold, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. And thou shalt say to him all things that I charge thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak to Pharaoh, that he should send forth the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden the heart of Pharaoh, and I will multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, and Pharaoh will not hearken to you. And I will lay my hand upon Egypt, and will bring out my people, the children of Israel, with my power out of the land of Egypt with great vengeance. And all the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, stretching out my hand upon Egypt, and I will bring out the children of Israel out of the midst of them. And Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so that did they. And Moses was 80 years old, and his brother Aaron was 83 years old when he spoke to Pharaoh. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, If Pharaoh should speak to you, saying, Give us a sign or a wonder, then shalt thou say to thy brother Aaron, Take thy rod, and cast it upon the ground before Pharaoh, and before his servants it shall become a serpent. And Moses and Aaron went in before Pharaoh, and before his servants, and they did so as the Lord commanded them. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh, and before his servants, and it became a serpent. But Pharaoh called together the wise men of Egypt, and the sorcerers, and the charmers. Also the Egyptians did likewise with their sorceries. And they cast down each his rod, and they became serpents. But the rod of Aaron swallowed up their rods. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he hearkened not to them, as the Lord charged them. And the Lord said to Moses, The heart of Pharaoh is made hard, so that he should not let the people go. Go to Pharaoh early in the morning. Behold, he goes forth to the water, and thou shalt meet him on the bank of the river. And thou shalt take in thine hand the rod that was turned into a serpent. And thou shalt say to him, The Lord God of the Hebrews has sent me to thee, saying, Send my people away, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou hast not hearkened. These things saith the Lord. Hereby shalt thou know that I am the Lord. Behold, I strike with the rod that is in my hand on the water which is in the river, and it shall change into blood. And all the fish that are in the river shall die, and the river shall stink thereupon, and the Egyptians shall not be able to drink water from the river. And the Lord said to Moses, Say to thy brother Aaron, Take thy rod in thy hand, and stretch forth thy hand over the waters of Egypt, and over their rivers, and over their canals, and over their ponds, and over all their standing water, and it shall become blood. And there was blood in all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and of stone. And as Moses and Aaron did so, as the Lord commanded them. And Aaron, having lifted up his hand with his rod, smote the water in the river before Pharaoh, and before his servants, and changed all the water in the river into blood. And the fish in the river died, and the river stank thereupon. And the Egyptians could not drink water from the river, and the blood was in all the land of Egypt. And the charmers also the Egyptians did so with their sorceries. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not hearken to them, even as the Lord said. And Pharaoh turned and entered into his house, nor did he fix his attention even on this thing. And all the Egyptians dug round about the river so as to drink the water, for they could not drink the water from the river. And 7 days were fulfilled after the Lord had smitten the river. And the Lord said to Moses, Go unto Pharaoh, and thou shalt say to him, These things says the Lord, Send forth my people that they may serve me. If thou wilt not send them forth, behold, I afflict all thy borders with frogs, and the river shall teem with frogs. They shall go up and enter thy houses, and into thy bedchambers, and upon thy beds, and upon the houses of thy servants, and of all thy people, and on thy dough, and on thine ovens, and upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people shall the frogs come up. And the Lord said to Moses, Say to Aaron thy brother, Stretch forth with the hand thy rod over the rivers, and over the canals, and over the pools, and bring up the frogs. And Aaron stretched forth his hand over the waters of Egypt, and brought up the frogs. And the frog was brought up, and covered the land of Egypt. And the charmers of the Egyptians also did likewise with their sorceries, and brought up the frogs on the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron, and said, Pray for me to the Lord, and let him take away the frogs from me, and from my people, and I will send them away, and they shall sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses said to Pharaoh, Appoint me a time when I shall pray for thee, and for thy servants, and for thy people, to cause the frogs to disappear from thee, and from thy people, and from your houses. Only in the river shall they be left behind. And he said, On the morrow. He said, Therefore, as thou hast said, that thou mayest know that there is no other God but the Lord. And the frog shall be removed away from thee, and from your houses, and from the villages, and from thy servants, and from thy people. Only in the river shall they be left. And Moses and Aaron went forth from Pharaoh. And Moses cried to the Lord concerning the restrictions of the frogs, and Pharaoh appointed him. And the Lord did as Moses said, and the frogs died out of the houses, and out of the villages, and out of the fields. And they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. And when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, his heart was hardened, and he did not hearken to them as the Lord spoke. And the Lord said to Moses, Say to Aaron, Stretch forth thy rod with thy hand, and smite the dust of the earth, and there shall be lice upon the man, and upon quadrupeds, and all the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his rod with his hand, and smote the dust of the earth. And lice were on the men and on the quadrupeds, and in all the dust of the earth there were lice. And the charmers also did so with their sorceries, to bring forth the louse, and they could not. And the lice were on both the men and on the quadrupeds. So the charmers said to Pharaoh, This is the finger of God. But the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he hearkened not to them, as the Lord said. And the Lord said to Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. And behold, he will go forth to the water, and thou shalt say to him, These things says the Lord, Send away my people, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I send upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and upon your houses, the dogfly. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be filled up with the dogfly, even throughout the land upon which they are. And I will distinguish marvelously in that day the land of Gesem, on which my people dwell, in which the dogfly shall not be, that thou mayest know that I am the Lord, the God of all the earth. And I will put a difference between my people and thy people, and on the morrow shall this be on the land. And the Lord did thus, and the dogfly came in abundance into the houses of Pharaoh, into the houses of his servants, and into all the land of Egypt, and the land was destroyed by the dogfly. And Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron, saying, Go and sacrifice to the Lord your God in the land. And Moses said, It cannot be so, for we shall sacrifice to the Lord our God the abominations of the Egyptians. For if we sacrifice the abominations of the Egyptians before them, we will be stoned. We will go a journey of 3 days into the wilderness, and we will sacrifice to the Lord our God, as the Lord said to us. And Pharaoh said, I will let you go, and do ye sacrifice to your God in the wilderness, but do not go very far away. Pray then for me to the Lord. And Moses said, I then will go forth from thee, and pray to God, and the dogfly shall depart both from thy servants and from thy people tomorrow. Do not thou, Pharaoh, deceive again, so as not to send the people away to do sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses went out from Pharaoh, and prayed to God. And the Lord did as Moses said, and removed the dogfly from Pharaoh, and from his servants, and from his people. And there was not one left. And Pharaoh hardened his heart, even on this occasion, and would not send the people away. And the Lord said to Moses, Go into Pharaoh, and thou shalt say to him, These things saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Send my people away, that they may serve me. If, however, thou wilt not send my people away, but ye detainest them, behold, the hand of the Lord shall be upon thy cattle in the fields, both on the horses, and on the asses, and on the camels, and on the oxen and sheep, a very great mortality. And I will make a marvelous distinction in that time between the cattle of the Egyptians and the cattle of the children of Israel. Nothing shall die of all that is of the children of Israel. And God fixed a limit, saying, Tomorrow the Lord will do this thing on the land. And the Lord did this thing on the next day. And all the cattle of the Egyptians died, but the cattle of the children of Israel there died not one. And when Pharaoh saw that of all the cattle of the children of Israel there died not one, the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Take you handfuls of ashes on the furnace, and let Moses scatter it toward heaven before Pharaoh, and before his servants. And let it become dust over all the land of Egypt. And there shall be upon men and upon beasts sore blains breaking forth on men and on beasts, in all the land of Egypt. So he took of the ashes of the furnace before Pharaoh, and Moses scattered it toward heaven, and it became sore blains breaking forth on men and on beasts. And the sorcerers could not stand before Moses because of the sores, for the sores were on the sorcerers, and in all the land of Egypt. And the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he hearkened not to them, as the Lord appointed. And the Lord said to Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. And thou shalt say to him, These things saith the Lord of the Hebrews, Send away my people, that they may serve me. For at this present time do I send forth all my plagues into thine heart, and the heart of thy servants, and of thy people, that thou mayest know that there is not another such as I in all the earth. For now I will stretch forth my hand, and smite thee, and kill thy people, and thou shalt be consumed from off the earth. And for this purpose hast thou been preserved, that I might display in thee my strength, that my name might be published in all the earth. Dost thou then yet exert thyself to hinder my people, so as not to let them go? Behold, tomorrow at this hour I will rain a very great hail, such as hath not been seen in Egypt, from the time it was created until this day. Now then, hasten to gather thy cattle, and all that thou hast in the fields, for all the men and cattle, as many shall be found in the fields, and shall not enter into a house, but the hail shall fall from them, and they shall die. He of the servants of Pharaoh that feared the word of the Lord gathered his cattle into the houses, and he that did not attend his mind to the word of the Lord left the cattle in the fields. And the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out thine hand to heaven, and there shall be hail on all the land of Egypt, both on the men and on the cattle, and on all the herbage of the land. And Moses stretched forth his hand to heaven, and the Lord sent thunderings and hail, and the fire ran along the ground, and the Lord rained hail on all the land of Egypt. So there was hail and flaming fire mingled with hail, and hail was very great, such as was not in Egypt, from the time there was a nation upon it. And the hail smote in the land of Egypt both man and beast, and the hail smote all the grass in the field, and the hail broke in pieces all the trees of the field. Only in the land of Gesem, where the children of Israel were, the hail was not. And Pharaoh sent and called Moses and Aaron, and said to them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Pray then for me to the Lord, and let him cause the thunderings of God to cease, and the hail, and the fire, and I will send you forth, and ye shall remain no longer. And Moses said to him, When I shall have departed from the city, I will stretch out my hands to the Lord, and the thunderings shall cease, and the hail and the rain shall be no longer, that thou mayest know that the earth is the Lord's. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye have not yet feared the Lord. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was advanced, and the flax was seeding. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were late. And Moses went forth from Pharaoh out of the city, and stretched out his hands to the Lord. And the thunder ceased, and the hail, and the rain did not drop on the earth. And when Pharaoh saw that the rain and hail and the thunder ceased, he continued to sin, and he hardened his heart, and the heart of his servants. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not send forth the children of Israel, as the Lord said to Moses. Psalms 22 and 23, 23 and 24 in Hebrew. A Psalm of David. The Lord tends me as a shepherd, and I shall want nothing. In a place of green grass, there he has made me to dwell. He has nourished me by the water of rest. He has restored my soul. He has guided me into the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, even if I should walk in the midst of the shadow of death, I will not be afraid of evils, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, these have comforted me. Thou hast prepared a table before me in the presence of them that afflict me. Thou hast thoroughly anointed my head with oil, and thy cup cheers me like the best wine. Thy mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and my dwelling shall be in the house of the Lord for a very long time. Psalm 23, 24 in Hebrew. A Psalm of David on the first day of the week. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and all that dwell in it. He has founded it upon the seas, and prepared it upon the rivers. Who shall go up to the mountain of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? He that is innocent in his hands, and pure in his heart, who has not lifted up his soul to vanity, nor sworn deceitfully to his neighbor. He shall receive a blessing from the Lord, and mercy from God his Savior. This is the generation of them that seek the face of the God of Jacob. Pause. Lift up your gates, ye princes, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Lift up your gates, ye princes, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Proverbs chapter 4, verses 14 through 19. Go not in the ways of the ungodly, neither covet the ways of transgressors. In whatever place they shall pitch their camp, go not thither, but turn from them, and pass away. For they cannot sleep unless they have done evil. Their sleep is taken away, and they rest not. For these live upon the bread of ungodliness, and are drunken with the wine of transgression. But the ways of the righteous shall shine like light. They go on and shine until the day be fully come. But the ways of the ungodly are dark. They know not how they stumble. The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 14, verses 1 through 21. At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Jesus, and said unto his servants, This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod had laid hold on John, and bound him, and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. And John said unto him, It is not lawful for thee to have her. And when he would have him put to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them, and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in prison. And his head was brought in a charger, and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. And the disciples came and took up the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And Jesus went forth, and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages, and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart. Give ye them to eat. And they said unto him, We have here but 5 loaves, and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves, and 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed, and brake, and he gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And he took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children.